someone who I admire deeply, Alicia Dale. Alicia is, sorry, I got to remove Aaron from the spotlight here. And as you all know, I'm doing all the text and trying to speak at the same time, so you have to bear with me here. There we go. Alicia is, and I go way back. We met through a group called the Independent Writers of Chicago, and Alicia is an expert in book writing and ghostwriting. And Alicia, as I mentioned, I'm not doing a lot of formal introductions, but if you could give a background, I appreciate you being here. And Alicia, it's 10:59, so let's give it 1 minute here. But it's okay. We'll call it close enough. Alicia, it's 11 o'clock. Take it away.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Scott, thanks so much. I'll correct you. We go back even longer than that. I was a fan of yours at your next door meetup groups. And I used to follow you with the Content Academy and the bloggers. And I was like, who is this guy? He's on top of it. So I just kept, staying in touch with you and connecting with you. So that relationship has grown over time, which is awesome.
Wow.
I'm very, very excited to be here. What a thing to follow Erin Leonard. I'm like, everything she said, yes. I experience that she has such a high energy. I'm like a little bit lower energy, which is cool because I'm loving the way that everyone is really just coming up and showing who they are and being who they are. And that's how we're all successful. And that's one of the great things about the current economy. As far as my background, I have a long-term business background and worked at a lot of companies, worked at big name companies. Some of them are GE, Harris Bank here in Chicago, professional capacities, subordinate capacities. So I have a big business view. And I always wrote, but I never really thought of it as a revenue stream until another shout out, I bumped into the Independent Writers of Chicago and they convinced me that all the writing that I did every day was a revenue stream. So I started to invest in it. And then I found my niche, and my niche is ghostwriting books. And this is what I love to do. I really enjoy it. Books are a big endeavor, and I like the people that I meet and the voices that I can unlock. So that's a little bit about what I do. Should I jump into showing my presentation?
Yeah, Alicia, thank you. That's a great introduction. And right now, let's go ahead and let's see your presentation.
Okay, so do I have screen share now?
You should be able to. Yep.
Okay.
If not, let me know.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So the first question is, yes, should you write a book? Exactly
Alicia,
what? Yeah.
Alicia, I'm sorry. I don't think it quite popped up.
Oh, okay, cool. Hang on.
Try it one more time here.
Hang on. Okay. Just confirm with me if you're seeing it.
It says starting. Yep, there we go.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Just need to go into presentation mode. Yep.
Okay.
In the slide deck. Yep, there you go.
Great. Okay. Going to move my image so that I'm not distracted. So yes, should you write a book? Absolutely, you should write a book. So that's usually one of the first barriers is what do I have to say? What do I have to share? So exactly what Erin was talking about. Why are we going to do this? Why? So I'm going to cover two things, the why and the how of how you would write a nonfiction or a business book. And I'm telling you, Scott, this was like totally amazing positioning, but you might have a unique perspective on a mature topic. And I've heard the analogy of a chef being used before. If you love artichokes, do you know how many books there are on artichokes? There are so many ways to do things that you have an idea that you can do it differently. So don't be discouraged if you say, well, that topic on leadership has already been done, or that topic on efficiency has been done, or the topic on time management has been done. You have an idea, a unique methodology to share that the world needs to hear. The other thing is if you have a complex product or service, it's a great way to engage with your customers. If someone has read your book and you offer technology development, this person or that company is so much more engaged in the way you do it and how you do it than a cold call. So it's going to ramp up your sales cycle tremendously. Again, public speakers, what Erin was saying is, people want big bucks to speak. They need to look for other ways to generate revenue. If they have a book out there, they can do workshops, they can sell the book, they can promote the book. When you write a book, you become an authority on your topic. So it kind of breaks through and navigates through a lot of the competition there. So if somebody reads your book and they like your book, they're going to be engaged with you. And lastly, and I said this, a desire to connect deeply with your prospects. So I thought I would share with a story. I have a prop, so I'm going to grab it to make sure I can use it properly. Oh, it's not opening up. Here we go. Okay, so here's a story that I thought I'd share to illustrate why you should write a book. February 5, 2014 was a difficult day. It was the day my mom died. It was not an unexpected death. My 4 sisters and I were at her bedside as she transitioned to the next world. My younger sister and I decided to go home to her house to decide what we were going to do and how we were going to plan events. So we were sitting at the kitchen table leafing through a catalog, and we were discussing, should we wear dresses? Should we wear slacks? What's appropriate? She lives in a big house in the suburbs, a big multi-level house. And I was going downstairs to get something, and she had fluffy carpeting on the stairs. I slipped on the stairs and I fell flat-footed on the ground. I couldn't get up from that fall. It was a serious fall. I knew that if I went to the emergency room, I was no longer going to be part of the ceremony or part of the planning. So I decided I was going to move ahead and see a doctor later. I went to an orthopedic surgeon in Chicago, and he said, after the MRI, you have torn your anterior cruciate ligament, known as the ACL. His physician's assistant comes into the room, and she said, you know, you can live without your ACL. My dad ruptured his ACL in his 30s, and he still plays basketball. And I said, wow. I'm sure your dad has less body fat than I do, but that was inspiring. So it inspired me. Let's see if my Kindle will work again. It inspired me to get this book called Heal Your Knees, How to Prevent Surgery and What to Do If You Need It. I now know everything about the construct of the knee. Since I read this book, I was more informed as I engaged with my doctors, my physical therapist, and I had a conscious decision of what I was doing and why. So now I'm part of the very small control group of people that do not get ACL surgery. And I have the story to tell, and I'm still very active. So books can and do change your life. So if you have a message that someone needs to hear, I strongly encourage you to write it. So after you decide, yes, people need to hear my message, the first step is to write a good book. There's no way around it. Good writing is clear and understandable. That's the magic bullet. Typos, poor grammar, lack of clarity will damage the author's reputation. So seriously think about an editor if you're going to write it on your own, or at the very least beta readers, and there's plenty of beta readers that you can get for free. I personally am a feedback junkie. A well-written book will reach its intended audience, but the author does have to do some marketing, some selling and promotion. It doesn't matter who publishes your book, you are going to have to sell it if you want people to find it. This book, Heal Your Knees, was done by a mid-sized publisher, a university press. It was written by an orthopedic surgeon and a physical therapist. So it's got a lot of perspective in it, but it wasn't done by Simon & Schuster. So what actually makes a book a book? And I'm sorry about the sirens. I live right in the middle of an urban environment, not far from the fire department. And I've got the windows open because it's a nice day.
No worries. You know what happens is it's probably going to go by my house then, right? So then the sirens are mine. Yeah. So.
Oh, are you? We need. I don't know if you're near me.
No, but you know how sometimes it's like you can hear it on one Zoom and then you hear it on the other Zoom, and
Oh, exactly, exactly. So what makes a book a book? A book is about 30,000 to 50,000 words. Books are getting shorter because people's attention spans are getting shorter. So a 30,000 book, they kind of refer that to as an airplane book. Like you can read it from an airplane flight end to end. Hopefully we'll be on airplanes again soon. 50,000 words is a kind of the sweet spot, but a way to think about it is when it hits the floor, does it make a thud? Now it's a book. 10 to 20,000 words is an e-booklet or a booklet. And this is a brilliant strategy as well. If you have a blog, if you have an email marketing campaign to give away a free booklet is a great tool. And again, it accomplishes all the things that you wanted to accomplish with your larger book. And should you ever decide to write that bigger book, you have a component of the book that's ready to go. 800 to 2,000 words is about a white paper. A white paper is an objective analysis of your product or service. When you're thinking about writing a book, you should plan a month to 9 months to actually write your book from the beginning to the end. So once you've confirmed your topic, a great thing to do is to create a working title. You may change the title over time, but it's kind of a North Star to point to get you grounded. And the thing is, don't judge, just put it down, and it keeps you focused on your words. Then after that, you would develop an outline, including chapter titles. 50,000 words will be at least 10 chapters. So here's kind of a part where people struggle a bit because you have a great idea, but a great idea, translating it to 50,000 words is a bit of an endeavor, and you're going to have to answer a lot of questions, and you'll also have to kind of clarify those arguments in your head. Chapters will range from 2,500 to 5,000 words, but don't worry about word count. Content always drives length. So if you go over 5,000 words, it's not a big deal. And if you're under 2,500 words, it's not a big deal. If the information is important and relevant to the audience, that's what's key. After that, you would establish a timeline. And when I establish a timeline, I have the actual tasks. And I know that we've talked a lot about time management here, different tools. What I have done and what I have said to my clients is I need to factor in some time to reflect. So I meet them, I learn about the topic, I have my own opinions about the topic, we discuss it, and they may give me some things to look at, to read, to review, to react to. But rather than beating myself up about time management, going, you're not spending enough time in front of the keyboard, what I've realized over this past year is that I need time to reflect. And so after that meeting, could be 7 to 14 days before they see a draft. There might be more questions, there might be some effective challenge. This is not repetitive transactional type work. This is knowledge work, and it takes a little time. So then after that, you've kind of got your framework laid out, then you actually begin writing. So once you have your book, now you have to decide what you want to do with it. And again, I'm a feedback junkie, so I would use an editor. I would create, I would find beta readers. There are groups that will volunteer to be a beta reader and give you feedback. I personally cannot get enough feedback. I like it. So there's the traditional publishing group, which is the big five. Now Simon & Schuster is scheduled to be sold to Penguin Random House for $2 billion this year. So that just shows you how big this industry is. So it's going to go down to 4. Writing a nonprofit or a business book is different than writing a fiction book. So with a fiction book, you would write the entire manuscript and then you would go and you would hope that somebody would pick it up. With a nonfiction book, you would start with a query letter. A query letter is a little bit like a marketing plan. So it's about 25 pages long. You're going to have a synopsis of why the world needs this book. You need to find an agent. If you don't find an agent, you will not have as much leverage with the big companies. If you are not a big name without a big platform, you won't get a lot of attention from them. You will be required to market your own book, even though you are, unless you are a big name. They won't give you as much support. On the other hand, they do give you a stipend to write the book. So that can range anywhere from $1,500 to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on who you are and if they think that the market needs to have this book. This process takes a long time. You'll also get a professional editor. You'll lose control over the design. They will decide what the cover should look like and the marketing program, and they may tweak the message a little bit. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but that's kind of the whole picture of traditional publishing. It also takes a bit of a longer time than the others. Hybrid publishing are smaller companies that have emerged to kind of fill the gap between self-publishing and traditional publishing. Sometimes you pay them. Sometimes you work together and collaborate, but again, you're still going to have to do your own promotional work. You'll probably get an editor. You may not have full total control. You could also go to a university press if that's something that a university might want to pick up on. And then the last area is self-publishing, which creates no barriers to the market whatsoever. You write your book, you put it out there. The risk is that you don't have a professional book. And if you don't have a professional book that's been professionally edited, that reads clearly, that does have typos, it may not be a great reflection on you. You might get reviews that aren't good reviews. So you have to think about that. And it's a very easy thing to control to write a good book. So there's really no reason not to do it. The disadvantages, the author manages the process end to end and they endure all of the costs. The beauty is there is no barrier today to get your message to the market. Several years ago, the only option was traditional publishing, but now anybody who wants to write a book or has the desire to write a book can absolutely do it. So if you choose to write the book yourself, your blog posts are a great place to capture content of what the book should be. And the beauty of blog posts and social media and interacting with your audience is that you're getting feedback on what the market says that they want to know more about. So you kind of have your basis of why you should do it. Organize the material you've written on the topic, presentations, reports. The thing is, never throw away an idea. Ideas are collateral. You might have that idea, it might be 10 years old. You brush it off and you're like, wow, now's the time. Sometimes people, there's like a little bit of a negative voice of, it took them 10 years to write that book. Now that I do this, it's not that it took 10 years, it took 10 years for that idea to evolve. And sometimes it takes 10 years, sometimes it takes a month, but I'm telling you, all of your ideas are collateral and keep them, don't judge them, they're great. How do you capture ideas? There's lots of softwares out there and people use them. I wouldn't advocate one over another, but it would help you to outline your concepts. Use audio recorded notes. This is a great tool. I do this now. I'm trying to do more of it because you get that idea and you can capture it on your phone right away. This is the one I use, the word and the sticky note method. Now, I used to judge myself about the sticky note method, but every time I have an idea, I just write it down, and then it starts to build and grow, and then I have a pretty good outline in Word, and that's what that 5 to 7 or 14 days of reflection time is all about. And another great tool to use is just old-fashioned 3x5 cards, because you can lay them out on your workspace and you can rearrange them and organize them. Join a writing group. Meetup groups are great. There's lots of free ones. I would absolutely look at that. Some of the meetup groups I'm in, it's really cool because they're meeting from around the world. So I met a woman from Edinburgh, Scotland, and just exciting. Or create one of your own. A lot of fun. Why would you want to use a ghostwriter? To save time, stay focused, have a teammate to navigate through the process. And it truly is a team. It's not a scribe relationship where you're giving information to someone and they're simply organizing it, typing it. A positive ghostwriter relationship is where it's a team and you're co-collaborating. You'll have an expert to guide you through the process that understands best practices, provide effective challenge, and lastly, offer guidance. So that's what I've got going on. Let's see, we're at, oh my gosh, that's only 20 minutes. I could answer questions at this
Yeah,
point.
that's great. That was some great information, Alicia. And yeah, I know we definitely can cover some ideas and topics for writing. I guess let me think here. Uh, if I'm at square one, right? It's at square one, and I know I want to write a book, and I know that I want to have a book that's a decent size. You kind of covered that, the size and the depth of the book. I know that was one question I had before, was like how many words, and I was told like 40,000 words, and I was told like you know lots of different things over the years that um, sorry, I'm trying to do the tech and everything at once here. Let me.
I know, me too. I just turned off my screen share.
Okay, we'll start over. The word count's a big thing, but in terms of writing, if you're gonna write your own book, and I know they kind of call it like pantsing it, right, where you just kind of sit down and start writing. Do you have any ideas for that, or if someone just like so a lot of people who are creative, they wake up one day and they're gonna say they're gonna they start writing a book, right? Um, do you outline? Do you just start writing, or
I have a lot of ideas around that, and especially because I made a little bit of a career shift. And I used to write naturally, like I always wrote. I don't have pictures from my travels. I have journals. I used to take creative writing courses for fun, and I never ever thought of it as a revenue stream or work. So I was like, wow. But then when I said I'm a writer and I'm going to charge for this, everything changed. So I kind of choked a little bit with self-confidence, and I had to go through that journey a little bit of learning from professional writers. And one of the things that I do is when I'm doing something new is I only take advice from people who have done it. So if they haven't done it, I don't take it. So, there's a lot of books out there from people who haven't done it. I used to be in sales. There are sales books by trainers who have never sold in their lives. And if you actually haven't done it, you really don't have that credibility. So I joined as many groups as I possibly could. I learned from people. I followed people. I grew. I had a lot of challenges. So first, you really have to go. I bought a lot of books, some great books on writing. I like Stephen King's The Craft of Writing. I think that's a really good one. William Zisner, a lot of people read that in college, but he
I'm
talks
writing well.
about,
Yeah. Yeah.
isn't it
I'm
great?
writing well. Yep. That's one of the classics you can't go without, right? Yeah.
Can't go without it. And he talks about courage. And there does take courage, and you are going to be criticized no matter what. So you have to be ready for that, because you're putting yourself out there. You're putting your ideas out there. Um, a book can always be edited further. And if you have less than 10 typos and 50,000 words, that's about right. So don't worry about it. The other thing that I found is I really love nonfiction, and there's kind of a dialogue between fiction and nonfiction. Which one's better? Which one's more of an art? Which one's more of a craft? I really like nonfiction. So I have found through the world now a lot of people who love nonfiction. I joined a nonfiction authors association. I'm in nonfiction meetup groups, and to be with people who honor that piece of writing, it's been a lot of growth for me. So that's been inspiring. So there is a little bit of a mental challenge you have to go through before you actually sit down and do it.
Hmm. Yeah. That's some great advice. I think that there's lots of one thing that I know for me was that I started writing a bigger book. Right, it was going to be the blog you want in the time you have book, and it was this big. That was going to be my 40,000 word book, which I still have like it's probably almost done somewhere. I need to go find that manuscript and take a look at it. But one of the things that I did was that I realized that in order to go through the marketing strategy of that book and how to promote your blog, I'd have to write a smaller book or a workbook to kind of make that happen. That was one way for me to wrap my brain around like kind of like the toughest part of the
Mm,
book. Well, I ended up making that, you know, its separate book, and it worked out, you know. And I think that it wasn't as long, but it's okay. I think it's digestible and it makes sense for what I use it for.
hmm.
And that I know you and I talk a lot about having a book is a great way. It's the business card of
Yes.
the new millennium. You know, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's definitely books are the new business card. If you're an author, it shows that you're an authority on your topic. I mean, it helps you to engage with your audience. You can repurpose the content in the book. You can turn it into blog posts, presentations, public speaking opportunities. Books are evergreen, especially hard copy printed books. I like ebooks, especially for technical information, because you can blow up charts and graphs. And I personally like that. However, a hard copy book has life. So if we use a digital medium and you upgrade your system, you now, lost your book or lost your opportunity, or where's that good idea? Now that I have, started writing full time, I wasn't a person who had lots of books because I live a block away from the library. So I'd go, I'll just go get that book. There are some books that really shape me that I can't find anymore. And so now if I were to move, I'd be one of those really strange people that only packs their books and just buys everything else that you can buy, because ideas are critical, and they help people.
I think writing nonfiction is you and I are I think wired that way. I find it I don't know about you, except for iWalk, like I find it hard to find other nonfiction writers and editors and stuff like that. I feel like most people kind of gravitate towards fiction, which I haven't picked up a fiction book in forever. You know, I like nonfiction because I like the technical and practical advice that you
I
get.
do too. I just joined a nonfiction meetup group, which I'm liking. It's at 8 o'clock on Wednesday nights, and it's really fun. And it's only 3 sessions old, but I'm not a nighttime person, so it's a little hard for me. But I'm just enjoying it because we're having conversations like this about nonfiction.
Hmm.
The neat thing about nonfiction and fiction writers is if you're a professional writer, fiction writers will give you leads because it's not their genre. So we learn from each other, but we don't compete with each other, which is really great. And you can learn a lot. One of the books I like in the fiction world was written by um, a man who lived right here in Chicago called Immediate Fiction. And his name is Jerry Cleaver. He used to run the Writer's Loft, which all of that is gone now. But when people say, writing is the hardest thing you ever did, one of his thoughts is, no, it's not. And it's really, really like digging ditches, building houses. I mean, it's the hardest thing you ever did, So nonfiction writers, we have a different conversation, but we can definitely collaborate and learn from fiction writers. I was getting a lot of requests to read fiction books, which was becoming overwhelming. So the Chicago Writers Association, which is a really inclusive group, they're mostly fiction, but they have a group of volunteer people who will read books, fiction books. They may read nonfiction as well. But I just say keep looking for those sources. The other thing is I'm a member of the Nonfiction Authors Association. They're 10 years old. They have had online conferences since the beginning. They're having one that's coming up in March, and they gave me a promo code. If anybody wanted to go, they'd get 40% off, which I could share maybe in the
Please.
Facebook group.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'll share it in the Facebook group. But I became a reviewer for them, and I love it because now I get to read lots of different nonfiction books, but also evaluate them for the quality of the book.
I like that. Yeah, I like that idea. And I think that one thing I've learned over the years too is like I have a whole new system for reading books. You know, that like
What's
I
your
think
system?
well,
Because
it's not really.
I became a little overwhelmed with reading.
Yeah, it's not really a system. First of all, I'm a big audiobook guy. Most of the books that I've consumed have been audiobooks. But I do have to say, since the pandemic and since I've been working from home, I'm not in the car for 40 minutes a day to listen to audiobooks. So my audiobook listening has completely fallen off the wagon. I was like reading over 100 books a year, and now I'm down to, like, if I got four, that'd be great. But I've been forcing myself to read physical books or Kindle books just to get my speed up for reading, and to get back into reading physical things. Also, I do like to read. I know this is not the best thing to do. I like to read books in bed, so it's like, I know you're not supposed to do that because of sleep and everything, whatever. But it is nice to read a Kindle book in bed because the lights can be off and you can still read it, kind of thing. But that being said, I do take copious notes now, and I know some of us, like, I've become a book lover over the years. Like, to write in a book, or to highlight pages in a book, like, some people like gasp, and that's like ruining the book. But now it's like, I'm
It's
going,
your book.
it's my book, I bought it, whatever, fair game. So
That's right.
and that's a great way to take notes. And ultimately, one of the pieces of advice is I got from someone who I admire, who is an author, Hal Elrod. He wrote the book The Miracle Morning, and he did he just launched a movie last week, a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned in his documentary that he reads something and then he tries to teach it right away, especially for nonfiction. Like, he tries to teach that information right away, because that helps you connect that information into your memory better, and also you're helping spread the word. So it's a great way to
Yeah, I
utilize it.
before I used to just read books effortlessly, but then when I started writing as a profession, then it became a job. So I had to reconnect with that love of reading. So now I have about 5 working books at any time, and then when I finish one, I really need to reflect and absorb on it for a while, and then I bring it in. And I kind of, I don't want the serendipity of the book that found me to be gone anymore.
Hmm.
And I have to do so much research for my work too. So five rolling books really works for me. And then I also listen to more audiobooks. I actually will listen to more audiobooks now that I'm isolated, because I need to be away from the screen and the book, and you can do other things. And so audiobooks are a great thing to do as well. And once you have your written book, you can put it in lots of other formats.
Yeah,
You can
interesting.
revise it.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the, not to for my next book, whenever I write my next one. I don't know when it'll be. I kind of tell myself I don't want to write another book until I have a bigger following. But that being said, if when I do write one, I think I'm gonna write it, and then I'm going to do the, like, record it, right, so I can listen to it myself,
I love
right?
that idea.
Or Maddie actually mentioned this yesterday about podcasting, and I was going to mention it for books too. Or use like a text to speech type app where it reads it for you. Listen to it to make sure it kind of makes sense, and then ship it off to the next person to do the editing or whatever. But I feel like the more you have it together, as you know, the more you have it together, the better off it's going to be in the long run.
I love that. And you bring up an important point about platform.
Hmm.
So, social media is a great way to test ideas. Twitter is a great avenue for nonfiction writers. Twitter is something to get on. And if you have a bigger platform, then the big 5 publishers will pay more attention to you. Also, Instagram has bookstagram pages, Facebook, private Facebook groups, all of those things to engage your audience. So I agree with you. If I were in your shoes, I think I'd do the exact same thing. Because as you know, writing a book is a big endeavor. So you've done it. And now you're going through, well, now I'm going to use it, build my platform. Should I write another one? For me, the sweet spot would be, when is your audience asking for it? Hey,
I
Scott,
love it.
where's your next book? I need that.
Yeah.
and,
Well,
and then that would
absolutely.
be the right time. But also, there's kind of a burning desire, like, I want to write this book. Or you're having conversations with people and they're like, we never knew about that perspective, or I didn't really see it that way. For me, one of the great things about this creative process was the time management, because I kind of grew up with the Stephen Covey days, where they gave you the book and they said, you have to do it like this. Well, I was like a shadow person who did that for the office, but I had my own methodology, and it just never worked for me. But now we can be like a little bit more open about that. Like the sticky note method, I finally just owned it. It's a really good one and
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to talk about this yesterday, but also I like sticky notes too. As I mentioned before, that I have a notepad right here. This is kind of my thing. This is a free notepad I got from somebody who was giving away, notepads, right? So I didn't pay a penny for it.
Yeah,
Whenever I have an idea, right? Because I get lots of ideas for whether it's a book idea or a creative idea, or whether it's a big picture idea or a short term idea. I write it down and I put it in my uh, inbox. It's right here. You can't see it because the camera's not there, but I have an inbox right here. And then every Sunday, I don't do it every Sunday, but I try to go through all my ideas during the week and then figure out what am I going to do with them. Is it something that goes into like a someday maybe future type category, or is it a something that I should schedule a due date and actually put it into my task management program for myself, or is it you know, is it something I should just do right now because it's Sunday and I have a little extra time? Like, if it's like write a paragraph for my book, then I could maybe just sit down and do it right then and there and move it to the done pile. So I think in terms of collecting ideas, you were mentioning that. I think that's one of the ways that I've been working on. That's actually based off the GTD, or Getting Things Done method, by David Allen.
I love it.
If you're a nonfiction reader or a productivity, that's a fantastic book. But anyways, I've adapted it for myself, but that's really what I use that inbox for. And I think in terms of writing whatever, because if you're writing a book, you have to source for a lot of ideas, and I think that.
You do. I do the same. I do that, and I put mine into like a real pretty jar or something that's kind of pretty, so that I like to have that in my space. And I actually need to go through it because, as creatives, we have bright, shiny syndrome. Like, oh, I want to do that. And that's so cool. And what a good idea. And in order to help me keep focused, if I have a good idea, I write it down, I put it in the pretty jar, and there it's there. But somebody gave me the advice of, at the end of the year, go through your jar and how many did you work on and how many are you going to work on. And my process is kind of loose. I'm really reflective. I'm like, what worked and what didn't work. And one of the other things that I do is I think about, what did I like? What did I like? What did I enjoy doing this year? And that's kind of how I honed in on books, because I really like the long form. I like the intelligent collaboration. I like the research. So it's all about, creating work you like.
Yeah, I think too, like if it's a really great idea, I also believe this too. If it's a really awesome idea, that awesome idea for a book, or sometimes you call it beats or whatever, like, for like a chapter or whatever. If it's a great idea, I'll remember it when I need it. You know what I
It's
mean? Like,
true.
so
I
I,
agree. That happens. I've had that same experience. You're like, oh my gosh, there it is. And
yeah,
it may, and then too, you might, if you're a saver and you save all those ideas, you might be killing yourself to find it. It doesn't matter, because when you find it, it's going to be such a poor version of what you're thinking of right now. So I think you said that earlier, that, what did you say? Like, creativity grows, like, the more we give away, the more we have, kind of thing.
absolutely, absolutely.
I
All
really
right,
true.
it's 11:37, so let's go to some of the questions here, if you don't mind, Alicia.
Yeah, please.
So Dr. Dell here, well done, thank you. Thanks for sharing any insights into putting together and having an effective launch team.
Oh, I love that idea. One is, I would get a group of people that are very positive, that, because you get a lot of information about, this won't work, that won't work. People are very free with that kind of information. I don't know why, but I joined a ton of groups, some paid, some not paid. And one of the groups gave me advice I didn't want. And they said, start a professional Facebook page. And I thought, oh, I don't want to do that. And why didn't I want to do it? I didn't want to do it because I have a lot of family, a lot of people I've known from different areas of life that can be very combative on Facebook. And also, they don't, I don't really mix my personal and my professional world. So I created a professional Facebook page. And then I just said, who loves me? Like, if I fell off a log, they would be like, Alicia's amazing. She's so great. What's she doing now? Oh my gosh. So I only invited those 10 people out of my 300 contacts to like my Facebook page. And I got a deal off of that. So one of my friends is a PhD in psychology, and she said, I just finished my PhD. I can't write one more word. I'm exhausted. Can you help me write my website? So I helped her and I did that. And then I let it organically grow. So I would absolutely assemble that team and then be very careful about who you let in it. And because you want to nurture those ideas and you want to have them grow. And people always give you advice from their own perspective, and they can't really see your picture. That's my thought. Did I answer the question thoroughly?
I think so.
Dr. Dale? Okay, cool.
Let's see here. Robert said, thank you for sharing your personal story to illustrate your journey.
Thanks, Robert. It's a friend.
Gail said, great presentation. Love your story. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
Joan said, Trello board is helpful when you are organizing the content of your book.
I've heard a lot of people like that one.
It's helped me with my ever ongoing project of writing her book. And Joan, I agree. Thank you for sharing that.
I wanted to add about the personal story, because we all have like so many different life experiences. So I grew up in business, like you never talk about your personal life, where people do now. And so it was kind of like a mind shift for me to do that. But with writing, here's a tool that I use as well. It's the who, what, when, where, why, how, and so what. Who would care? So, I mean, I could tell this tragic story about my mom dying and we could all relate to it, losing someone that we love and that's close to us, but where's the so what? And tie it into that so what? And then people will remember the emotion, and then they'll remember the tactic that you're trying to talk about as well. So what is one of the criteria I use when I write. Like, who would care about this and why?
Mm-hmm. Great point. You said we had an exercise in college. We said, so what? We always
is that right?
Really go in my communications class. We just go back and forth. You'd say something, we'd say, so what? And then we have to keep responding. And when you go, so what, so many times, you get down to the very core. And that's what helps you define really what you're trying to do.
I love that exercise. And that's what writing a book is going to do for you. You're going to be answering the so what all along the way.
Right. All right. Sorry, I lost my point here in the questions.
One of the other things that you brought up that I thought was really interesting, I think it was yesterday, you said that journalists are always looking for what's good or what's bad. And what's great about that feedback is, there are a handful of journalists in my network, and now I get it, like, oh, they're looking at it through that frame, because I either think they're saying it's better than it really is, or it's worse than it really is, and it's somewhere in the middle, but that's their training. So that was really helpful.
They're always trying to shoot holes into it, right? It's like just sometimes you just gotta let it be, and let it be what it is, and instead of trying to find the negative, like just embrace the positive, It's how I'm trying to live life. And if you open your mind that way, like, there's just so many more opportunities when you let your mind get rid of that like negative cynicism. And it happens. It's like heartburn. It happens every once in a while, but but ultimately, like I listening to some of these other you could call them authors or teachers or whoever you want. If you listen to them and actually take what they have to say and not be so cynical about what they're really saying, then you can really use it for what it's worth. Just be careful with what I call the BS factor too, the bullshit factor. Just make sure you're not getting too far into their crazy that you lose sense of your own purpose and your own pocketbook. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, so okay. Sorry, back to the questions. Joan said, "Can you find independent editors to help with when they're ready to publish? This is with the idea of self-publishing in mind." Joan,
Absolutely.
Can you elaborate on that? Or do you have a further question, or?
Well, the concept is, if you're looking for your finished writing and you want to self-publish, can you find an independent editor that will say to you, okay, I'm going to edit this book and look over your writing and give you some good feedback that you wouldn't ordinarily get if you just said, okay, I'm going to self-publish and just stick it up on Amazon? Because you don't want to, what Alicia was saying earlier, you don't want to just publish some sort of book with a bunch of mistakes that you thought was perfect, but the public didn't, and you'd be in real trouble there. So you'd be looking for an independent editor to say, okay, and you would probably do it for a fee, to give you that advice to say, hey, you're really off track here. You've got to do some more work here, and I like the so what criteria. Okay, so what? You haven't given me anything to go on, etc., etc. Can you find those independent editors?
Absolutely. There's an association of editors that you could go to, the Independent Writers of Chicago. We have a website, it's iwalk.org. You can look through our members. There are editors there. When you interview an editor, I would make sure that they edit in your genre. And editors are important. It's sometimes a painful process. Because you're giving them your baby to look at, and they might be poking holes at it, and you might get defensive, and it's really something to grow. But when you have an editor, you have a good editor that you trust and you rely on in a team, it's really a fabulous process, and your writing will be so much better for their perspective, even if you disagree with them, because it will make your so what argument stronger, and you'll work with them as a team to collaborate. So I would try all of those things, and I would, you could even ask friends just to get their information. But as far as payment, it's a nice thing to do. And for friends, it's a nice thing to give them a gift card or something, or a thank you or something, because it's a big deal to go through 50,000 words and give some critical feedback. And you also have to kind of put your armor on, because editing, you're vulnerable to what they're sharing with you, and you want to keep that intent of your writing in the writing. But you'll see when people publish books, they're always thanking their editors, especially the good ones. So I encourage you to do that.
I think it's a balance between, like, one, being receptive to feedback, but two, going with your gut. When you say, no, this is what I want, and I struggle with this all the time. So it's something, it's like, yes, I want the feedback. I want to make it the best.
I struggle with it too. And sometimes I have to take a deep breath, and I've got to go for a walk, and I've got to think about it, and I've got to think about it from their perspective. Then I've got to look at it the next day and then absorb it again. And usually it's not as bad as I thought it was, but since it hit me at the wrong time, or they said something that pushed my button, I get defensive first, but that's where that reflection time comes in too. So when people say, well, what do you mean it's going to take you, 6 months to write this book? What do you mean? Just, here's the ideas, just write it. And it's not a transaction. If it was a transaction, an app could do it. And there are apps, if you want that, go ahead. And, with the books that I review for the Nonfiction Authors Association, I had an author who bragged, I wrote it in 3 months. It showed. It was a good book. It was a little unwieldy. It kind of went around. Some of the ideas were not fully developed. And, so if the goal is to get it out fast, okay. But if you can wait an extra month and have someone read it and give you some feedback, why not take it?
Yeah. Although sometimes too, you got to just put the hammer down and put it out there.
That's true too. Yeah. You do. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I say put the hammer down. I say we need ideas in the universe and just get them out there, and you never know who they're going to help. I should actually write a thank you letter to these authors. I never did. They're not in Chicago, but I know all things me.
The other thing too is I always think that, hey, it was my first one, and my fifth one will be my best book, So sometimes you just got to kind of know that you're learning and you're growing and you're failing forward, in a positive
way. Well, that's why it's
so
great to read Stephen King's book on the craft of writing, because, he gets dismissed. He's writing fiction and horror, and, he's sitting in his mansion in Massachusetts, not caring what people say about him. But he worked at Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, he was really poor, and he started out writing classified ads in high school, and he didn't use an agent when he published Carrie. And he was so frustrated with Carrie, he threw it into the wastebasket. He was so done with that manuscript. His wife picked it up and sent it to someone for him, and they picked it up. And he talks about very candidly how he could have made a lot more money off of Carrie had he had an agent. Because that's the other thing. If you go to a traditional publisher, do I really need an agent? They help you navigate through the process. And that's another layer of someone else you have to deal with that's going to be criticizing your idea.
Yeah, they'll advocate on your behalf, hopefully. So yeah. A couple more questions here or feedback. Laura Stigler. Hey, Laura. Thanks for being here. Laura Stigler mentioned great nonfiction can read like a novel. For example, Devil in the White City. And I agree. It should read like a novel, right? So yeah, good point.
Yeah, they call that narrative nonfiction. It's very popular now. Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with biographies and memoirs. Those are all nonfiction.
I agree. And if you want to write a biography or a memoir, my personal bias is include the so what. Because if it's just this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me, unless people really care about your personal story, like you're a big public figure, without the so what, it won't drag people in. So that's my personal opinion.
But I mean,
whatever you want.
I agree, but also writing other people's memoirs is, that's in itself, so.
I mean, if you're just writing a memoir to tell your story, that's a bit cathartic. But if you have a so what tied into it,
Right.
that's really great. I talked to a woman, she didn't actually get going with her book, but she owns 3 successful businesses and she survived 3 suicide attempts. And, to me, both of those stories are very interesting. How did you handle the mental illness? How did you grow? How did people interact with you? So you kind of have to choose what is it that you want to get to your audience.
Cool. Robert has a question.
Hi, Robert.
Robert, are you still there? Are you here? Can you want to ask your question? Because it's kind of long. I don't.
Okay, sure. I helped an artist make images for his book. He was a painter, and he was telling his life story. He's a self-taught painter, and he had never written before. And I suggested that he find help, and that he actually talked to a lawyer about the contract before he signed it with the press, and he didn't. He was a very headstrong person, and I really think they took advantage of him. There are places out there that do that, right? And how do you
Who's they? Who's they, Rob? Who's they that took advantage of him?
I think it was his publisher was called Golden Touch Press.
Okay, so the publisher took advantage of him.
Right, right, and they had a really bad editor, and when they published the book, I had sent them both the large JPEGs and the small JPEGs for website promotional use, and they used the small JPEGs for the production. Right, exactly. So the photographs look like crap compared to what they could have looked like. How do you avoid?
Well, that's such a great question. And everyone who has the title of their job is not qualified for their job. So we know that. And then whether or not the publisher took advantage of them or not, I'm not sure. But again, the more we know about our processes, the better we're in a position to manage and navigate them. So now that I've been working through the publishing system and the 3 types of publishing, I feel very confident in driving the process and making sure that those kinds of things didn't get done. Maybe they intentionally or unintentionally took advantage of him, but he didn't know what it was going to look like. Now, one of the reasons, and it's just my own personal bias, is as you go up the ladder with traditional publishing, you lose control. So Stephanie Chandler, who's the head of the Nonfiction Authors Association, she owned a bookstore, and then she personally, traditionally published 3 books. She's absolutely anti-traditional publishing, because once you know how to do it, she's like, why don't you keep all the money yourself? That's a great perspective, but it's also a lot of work. So I wouldn't say that I'm anti, but there's a lot of resources out there. Like the Nonfiction Authors Association would have been great for him. And there's communities, people to ask. I mean, the world is so transparent now. I'm sorry that happened to him. Did it get published?
It did. It got published, and I have a copy of it.
Were you happy with the quality of the photographs? No, and you
not
took
at
them.
all. Not
and
at
you
all.
took them.
Right. Well, I made copies of his paintings that he could actually make reproductions of the same size as the painting. So he can have a 30 by 40 inch photograph or print of his painting. And that's what the book publisher had, and they didn't use it.
Well, that story is so sad to me, because if he flipped it and he was more happy with the work and you were more happy with the work, I mean, you both have platforms that you could promote it on, and it's not too late. You could do, version 2.0 of that book. I mean, you could, but I know that it's getting into more investment now. So
right, but now that the photographs have come out bad in the press, now he discounts my quality as a photographer or an advisor, and he has decided to try and tried not to pay me for the last job that I did. But I had paintings of his that held hostage, so that he had to give me the money if he wanted his original art back. But
yeah, as an artist, what I've learned, and this is more of the creative field, writing is kind of the perfect balance of left brain, right brain. So I've been, really had to learn a lot of personal power and personal presence about negotiating. So I have to get a deposit. And the other thing that I've noticed is I do some report writing for a psychiatrist, and they'll just like jump them on me, like, oh, don't worry about it. We agreed that you would do one every 10 days, but don't worry about it. Here, just take 5 and do it when you want to. And I had to push back on that. And then what I did was I said, well, I'll get it to you like in 6 months, where I usually turn it around in 10 days, because you really have to claim your space about negotiating, right. Otherwise, we all have those stories, and I appreciate it. And what I love about you sharing it is now we've all learned, be careful with that.
Oh, sure. That's, it's like I had contracts with him all the way up until that point in time. And then the third time I was making images, it was like, well, can't you just do it now quickly?
Yeah. Yeah, this great. I want to get a couple more questions in, because we're running out of time here for this session. But basically, thank you for sharing that, and I hope there's a resolve for that. But ultimately, Laura Stigler also mentioned Lawyers for the Creative Arts, which is a great resource. So thank you for posting it in there, Laura. And also Steve Loam says he's got a story. I know you've got a published book, so.
Cool.
Yeah, I wrote a nonfiction book several years ago. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wrote a nonfiction book several years ago, and before it was self-published. Before publishing it, we decided we'd do a little bit of group, crowd editing. So basically,
what a great idea.
We passed the manuscript out to several people. They had an opportunity to read it, and then we actually all got together in my living room, and we reviewed it together. And actually, there was a consensus, actually, and the consensus was that there wasn't enough personal information in the book. As I said, it was a nonfiction book, and I don't really like talking a lot about myself. I'm happy to talk, but not so much about the personal. But
and Steve, how long ago was it when you wrote that?
It was probably about maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'm with you. We kind of have like that different background where work is work and home is home, and you don't mix the two, but people are more open now and sharing, and it's a way to connect. And I just had to become okay with that. And I had to become okay with how comfortable I am. But that's one good piece of feedback. What did you decide to do with it?
Well, like you, I had to be comfortable with it too. And as it turned out, I ended up rewriting the first chapter of the book, and actually the second one as well. And I think as a result, not only did people enjoy the book more, I felt more accomplished. I felt as if I had actually done something that was not only significant by way of sharing with others, but it was also more important to me. I don't want to say cathartic, but it was a much, much better experience.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from your question is it's a delicate balance, and you have to learn how to use it. But I think it's important that we share, because we learned a negative thing about, just being very compartmentalized, and just like these 2 days of sharing and transparency, and I'm not perfect. And this has been so enjoyable for me. So, grabbing kind of with the way the world is going. One of the things I'll share that I really struggled with was being so transparent. because you can find me on the internet. You can find anything. So just being really careful about blocking and, managing your digital presence, your personal presence, because you're really out there. And that's a vulnerable place to be.
Well, I think the other part of it is, particularly when you're writing nonfiction, I guess, which can tend to be maybe a little bit more technical or impersonal, I think people still want to have a connection with the author. They
I
still
agree.
establish a personal connection, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, I think, is because of the emotion and the resonance. The other is that they want to know that you actually have the authority to be talking about this. So I think both of those are important.
I agree.
Yep.
I'm so
Thank you,
glad
Steve.
that you embraced it and brought it into your story. I'm sure that it's more rich because of it. And that's another testament to editing. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thank you, Steve. Hey, look, we're going to talk to Steve at 6 o'clock tonight. So be sure to come back for that. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about his book, The $500 Cup of Coffee, too. So be sure to check that out. But hey, before we get too far, Alicia, you mentioned you were very generous in offering a door prize. So can you give some feedback on that?
Yeah, what I would like to do is I've created a workshop. Oh, there's the dog.
Doesn't want to give that away.
I have two choices, one to go grab her or the other is to walk through it. Somebody must have walked by the door. So what I've done is I've created a 4-session workshop. It's 2 hours each. It'll be a group setting, so you'll have that kind of collaborative information. The value of the workshop is $665, and I'd like to raffle one off.
All right, I'm gonna enter my raffle code right here. Proprietary information, proprietary algorithm for giving away stuff. Let's see here. This is a VIP one, so let's do the VIP chat. And the winner is, oh wow, Joan Margot. Joan's the winner of the raffle. So congrats,
Sweet.
Joan. We'll connect
Thank
on
you.
that. We'll connect on that shortly after the summit and get you guys hooked up. So
Fabulous.
thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Alicia, with much gratitude, thank you so much for your excellent presentation today. Go out, everyone watching, go out and write a book and have Alicia help you do it. Have Alicia help you do it. Honestly, I wish we met before I wrote my book. I definitely would have been working with you, and it would have been a lot better, and I think I would have had a lot better product. But also, if you can't do that, then just do it. That's what I say.
Just do it. I say just do it too.
If it's not 20,000 words, just go with what you got. If it's just a booklet, go with a booklet. So
I say
that being
do
said.
it.
But anyways, thank you, Alicia. I hope you can stick around today, and I'm really,
Sure.
really happy to